Welcome to Art Cafe. I'm Machi Kuchara. This is episode 115. I have a great guest today, Ian Hubert. I discovered Ian's work quite by accident in suggested content on YouTube, watched a bunch of his videos, and had to invite him on the podcast, and so here we are. Ian is an independent and self-funded filmmaker, also known for hilarious Blender lazy tutorials on YouTube. Definitely go check it out. We spoke about his work, career, and current goals, touched upon the industry, and generally had quite some fun. Hope you're gonna enjoy the show as much as I did. Let's go.
People are already probably familiar with your history, so I can just look that up on my own time.
Well, I mean, this is a conversation. So, like, any questions you have, like you want to learn something, we could just flip the script and talk about that. But I get flack for talking too much on the podcast and like, hey, let the guests talk a little more. I'm trying my best. Friends. I'm trying my best. But yeah, dude, I discovered your channel by accident, like by complete accident, not even through, because normally like usually someone you know will share a video, and then that's how you discover a lot of material, or you get it through recommended space, right? Like you watch a video and then there's a recommendation, you watch the video from that recommendation. Yours was like not even in the recommendations. Like sometimes YouTube just throws you like a nugget, like, hey, here's some weird stuff you've never seen before, right? And I feel like, because I was on the podcast talking a lot about Blender and trying to learn it myself, and then, maybe Google searches kind of association with it. And then like, oh, there's like a minute video on how to make stuff, and a click is like, holy crap, this is what I need. like I wish a lot of people did videos like that, where it's like concise and funny and witty, but I think it requires like, it needs to be a special kind of person to do that, There
have been several kind of copycat type situations where it's kind of weird, where it's like, because there's certain ways if you're trying to make something really concise where you kind of set up a thing and then it's kind of like colon this, do this, colon this, and like hearing those same kind of cadences in other people's things, it's like very bizarre. Not that like trying to make a thing that happens to be able to fit on Instagram, which was like the other catalyst is like, that's where anybody actually watched anything I did. So it's like, oh, all right. It's also why they're like vertical, because that's anything on Instagram that's wide.
Right.
Screen only uses like 7% of your screen real estate. So yeah, but yeah, there've been a few where it's like, I feel like I'm here myself a little bit in this, and that's wild.
Yeah, I've seen those Ian babies. I've seen those Ian babies out there. I definitely did. No, but you found a perfect formula. I agree. Like, just sometimes you wish it was more concise, so you're not wasting time. A lot of times people do that because, frankly, YouTube has this algorithm that if you make videos that are 10 minutes and longer, you can put more ads in.
Yeah.
Meaning you will make more money from ads, which, I don't know, ads, you know how monetization works on Google or on YouTube, right? Like, that's almost no money.
Yeah.
Unless you have like millions of views, then that's cool. Like, there's a possibility for you to go viral. But in most cases, like, it almost sounds like, I don't know, those ads are more of a annoyance than the benefit to the channel, you know what I mean?
I was really excited when I finally realized, because I was making no money from anything for, ever.
Right.
Oh, YouTube ads. Okay, maybe this is a game changer. And it's like my biggest videos got me like $100 maybe.
Yeah.
And it's like I spent like 5 days working on this thing, and it's like
Yeah.
okay, not really. It's nice. It's cool. It'll help keep some lights on, a few lights, but not a game changer.
A few lights.
But
Not all of them. Not all of them.
well, I have a lot of lights.
Yeah. You live in near Seattle, right? Somewhere in that area.
Yeah.
You're like in the neck of the woods, or like you're more like a rural area or something.
Yeah, so it's Seattle's in this crazy inlet, and so it's like I think we have like 300 islands or like 1,000 islands or something in Puget Sound, and it's this crazy area. And so I am like 7 miles from downtown Seattle as the crow flies. I'm like 80 miles as the car drives. But they're about to put in a new little fast ferry thing, which is going to put me like 20 minutes from downtown, and
That's
it's just going to zip basically from my house to downtown. And so that was kind of the plan. Like, all right, I'm going to move way out into the boonies, but then through folding of space time, I will suddenly be closer. Which in most cases you can't do that. I was looking at a bunch of different places to move because I was going. There isn't a lot of film stuff in Seattle, really. There's a lot of CG type things, like game centric over in Redmond, because of like Xbox, Microsoft, all those different guys. Yeah. Valve is over there in Bellevue, but not so much. Just the moment you get out of there into like the Seattle area, there isn't so much of it, and definitely not like a visual effects side of things. And so, yeah, the plan was, can I do that sort of filmmaking thing anywhere near Seattle? And so we found this big old property way out in the boonies, this old church thing. We've been trying to turn it into it's kind of a general filmmaking zone, which has been fun. Turns out it's harder to get Seattle folks out here than I expected.
Right.
I kind of thought
maybe with the ferry is going to be easier, huh?
That's the hope, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even if it's just me, it's gorgeous. We've got trees. Turns out trees just fall on houses, and there's nothing that stops them from doing that. Not even like maybe I don't know. We literally have a tree that's just like this right now. It's on another tree, just kind of over a house, and it's in like the neighbor's yard, kind of like doing this. And so obviously I have to be an adult and go call the neighbors and be like, "Hello, I'm your neighbor. Now you know that you're liable if your tree falls on my house." And they're like, "I hate you in this whole situation, and I don't want to do that to anybody." So I've been putting that off for way too long.
Right.
So those are the trials of living in a bunch of trees.
Yeah, but there's some serenity that comes with it too, right? And,
yes.
Yeah. How do you find that? Because like, okay, so I want to talk about your past. What am I saying? Get to know you a little better in terms of like, how you end up doing what you do and all that stuff. But how do you find yourself in the situation? Because this is more of like a pressing thing right now with the COVID-19, all of those crazy things going on in the world. And I think you're primarily working from home, right? And mostly just doing your own work. Like what is the situation you're in right now? And how does the pandemic affect you at all, or?
A bit. It's surprisingly little. Like, yeah, I do work from home. We got all of our gardens and everything, and we can still go on walks and all of that. It's made going to the grocery store a bit weird, but we haven't seen any friends in basically 7 weeks or something like that, and so that's gotten a little bit like,
yeah, that kind of sucks.
But the rest of it, is weirdly unchanged, and I do basically all of my work online.
Right.
Usually, actually, up until like 2 months ago, it was only random like freelance work, different commercials or indie films or things that were kind of fun or not fun. But I started a Patreon thing a couple months ago, and that's like been a game changer. And so I don't even know how this life trajectory is going, but it's been really exciting.
Can you plug your Patreon, where people can find you if they listen to it?
Yeah, it just type in like Patreon Ian Hubert, because I love making my own films, and I love everything else is kind of just part of that filmmaking machine where I'm like, oh, I can't
Right.
build this set. Let's learn CG. Let's learn motion tracking to do kind of all of that. And so as I'm working on it now, I can like I'll document the process of making the assets. Then I can upload the assets, you know, for the people, and then that helps pay for the whole process. And so it's
Right.
like, and I'm not, yeah. And so it's literally the dream situation. And I'm kind of like, whoa, this has only started like a couple months ago. So I'm
That's
like,
awesome. Yeah.
yeah,
You know,
very exciting.
it seems to me that that's where a lot of, I mean, not a lot of market, but that's sort of like an ongoing interest of mine recently, because, you know, I've been working in the industry for past, I would say 16, 7, maybe even more, 16 years or more.
Wow.
And, you know, I went from like being a studio person, just working directly in the studio environment, to, you know, switching to longer projects, but working from home, and, you know, sometimes commuting, and then grabbing on shorter projects and running my own business, like a lot of small things here and there, like always ongoing, but always almost always being attached to client work, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that is slowly, you know, as much as I love doing that, I sometimes miss the freedom of like, hey, I want to do like this own thing that I love doing, but, you know, having a family, paying bills, you know, having a kid, like all of those things kind of paramount on you pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I'm always fascinated to hear like, oh, you know, someone's starting a Patreon, or someone's doing like, you know, teaching, all that stuff, where it seems that the markets generally just entertainment and artists overall have like way more choices now than ever before. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. It's the number of different technologies that have all been kind of developing in parallel that are now suddenly all just jumping into kind of the same pot. When you think of like VR and different like phone apps and different open source options and the machine learning stuff and like body motion tracking, like the mocap suits, or like the Kinect that can scan your body, or like phone facial tracking. It's all just absolutely ridiculous in terms of like what suddenly and in the past like 2 years you can do in a garage.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things I'm excited for is just seeing like what the teenagers who are like brewed in this stuff when their brains are still, you know, like
Yeah.
all plastic, what they're gonna do with all of this. Of course, I've been thinking that for a very long time. I remember like being in my early 20s, being like, all these teenagers gonna kick my butt. They're gonna be like, you old man, when I was like 24. And I don't know, there's teenagers doing really cool stuff, but I haven't seen that wave of the teenagers coming and just kicking all of our asses and making us all look like a bunch of dumb old people
Right.
yet. And I think I don't know. I think there's different reasons. I think there's I don't know. I guess that's a horrible thing to speculate on, of like, why aren't the teenagers kicking everybody's asses? But I think it's just gets into part of the creative kind of growth too. Is like everything I did as a teenager was god awful, and so even if you
That's true.
know
Oh
all the
man,
tools,
looking back when I was in my early 20s, oh, the work I was producing, holy crap.
I want to
so
have
bad.
like your stuff open on another monitor, just be like perusing, because you're prolific, man. Did you work on Epoch back there?
No, that's my friend Ash,
Okay.
who was doing all that. Him and I think Chris, maybe. I can't remember who else was working on this. I do actually have his poster right there.
Yeah, well, that's what I was.
Yeah.
Because it's like,
No, I have a poster because I really like it.
okay,
it's a
okay.
dope poster.
But you did the other post.
Oh yeah, this one. Yeah, that's
That's definitely you.
yeah, that's mine. That's one of my paintings. Epoch, yeah, Epoch is great. That's my friend Ash who did that. In terms of prolific, I don't know. You know, I grew up really poor, like really poor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I used to clean toilets to make money to buy my first Wacom, like not even a Wacom. I bought like this old shitty tablet. It was a pentagram. You know, remember those tablets that had like pen that you needed batteries, and then it was wired to the drawing surface as well.
Oh no, I
And
don't.
it cost
But
like $50 or something. It was like way back when. That was my first tablet. I worked like for a whole week to be able to afford it, you know, cleaning toilets in hospitals. Like fuck.
uh,
Because like my family was always poor. So maybe just growing up in sort of like this environment where I had no choice, and I knew like once I figured out like, hey, like art is making money. If I work my ass off, like maybe I'll get somewhere. You know, maybe that's where it is, you know. But I don't know. It's weird.
so you approached a lot of this from a 2D like drawing standpoint, and you're able to just kind of bring that
Right.
into. That's cool. You mostly do 2D, yeah?
Yeah, it depends on I mean, some of the commercial projects I've done were almost like 95% 3D. That happens too. But mostly, I mean, I grew up in this industry as a illustrator, mostly illustrator, concept artist. So it was mostly 2D. You know, when I was back in 2004, when I started, all the way up till almost 2010 or 2008, if you were a concept artist and you used 3D, there was some weird stigma that you're
Really?
cheating. Yeah, it was like very weird. It was same with using photos. Like things that these days like no one gives a crap about. Hey, like I'm using photos and bashing shit together and it looks cool, you know? Just coming up with ideas. Those things like don't matter now. It used to be like really frowned upon way
Really?
back then. Yeah. It was really weird. And some people just didn't care, you know? And it's funny because like you know who Craig Mullins is, right?
I'd probably know. Yeah,
It's
I'm just pulling up the other monitor
it's a
here.
granddaddy of digital art, basically. But
American
anyways,
painter.
So he
Oh
was
yeah.
he's legendary guy. But you know, like people would be like, oh, but because he's amazing at painting, he's a great painter. He is a granddaddy of digital art, basically. Like he invented speed painting, basically. That's his child, basically speaking. And But for commercial work, he just would use photos. Like, I mean, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
It's just, you know. And then once people realized, like, oh, the granddaddy of everything is using photos, like, oh, no one cares anymore, you know.
Oh, that's cool. The thing I've bought the most on Gumroad is just people like yourself who know how to kind of bash the thing together and then do the paint over to kind of make it all cohesive and add kind of their own
Right.
thing to it. And I just want to be able to watch that and like absorb the way their brain thinks, because that's the thing I always wanted to be able to do, and I just never pushed through that membrane to be able to do it.
So what's your background? Like let's maybe start from the beginning, like just sort of like, because we've been all over the place and that's cool, but I want to kind of learn how do you like here's little Ian. I like art. I'm a creative person, you know, whatever, 10-year-old, whatever. We don't have to go all the way back.
It's a path that I think a lot of people kind of did, where it's like I started as a kid drawing comics, and then eventually I realized like, oh, I can make flip books. Then it's like a movie. And then got my hands on this camcorder and tried to convince like friends like, hey, we're gonna do stuff. We're making like the tinfoil spaceships, you know, the paper plates and everything, like forced perspective, and dressing up in like sweatpants over our faces, like we're crazy aliens, and like all of the, you know, we saw the Matrix, and so we did the Matrix for the next like 3 years. Eventually I realized that coordinating friends was hard, and so I started doing stop motion with like, you know, the little Wallace and Gromit plasticine sculpey stuff, and just starting and stopping the camcorder really quick. Eventually, sometime in the mid 90s, was able to plug that into a computer, and there was a really old program called Corel Motion 3D, which if you Google that, you get software that isn't the software that I used. I used this other like precursor to that, which must have just been some like developer's pet project, but it lets you like extrude stuff and use a lathe option and parent and add keyframes. And so yeah, you could do kind of animations. And so that was really exciting, and figuring out how to combine that with real life footage. And so that, yeah, all of that stuff looked looked horrible. But Bryce 3D, then jumped over into Bryce 3D,
I
which
remember
was
Bryce. Yeah.
very good. What a bizarre interface. I love it. Like they rendered the interface in Bryce. It was like you want to make a mountain, you click on the floating mountain icon, and they have a big render of a trackball on the left. It was so good. And yeah, just kind of kept working on filmmaking and CG in parallel. Jumped over into Blender back in like 2004 or something, just like 16 years ago. That's crazy beans.
That's when Blender was, yeah, it was not what it is now at all.
Yeah, and it's like I've been the frog boiling in the pot, and so I've never really been aware of the changes. Like people say, it's a lot easier to learn now, and so that's cool. But again, when I was like 14 or whatever, it was just any other, like if I didn't have somebody holding my hand showing me the process as I was trying to learn it, I probably never would have been able to learn it. Right. Because it was a lot of buttons and a lot of different menus and all of that. But yeah, the past couple of years, Blender's just been like
skyrocketing,
crazy. Yeah, with the new EV real-time render engine, which just like changed the way I think about CG, because it isn't like you work and then you hit render and you see the thing. It's like, oh, I can import an image, I can cut it out, I can stick it over here, and then if I want, I can kind of refine it and make it look like whatever material it's actually kind of supposed to be. But like that refined, like being able to, like you're talking about for, you know, concept art or matte paintings, like being able to source from the real world and then just do this effectively digital paint over thing to it. And so it feels a lot more like doodling than working properly in CG. That's been really fun, and it kind of does feel as if it's kind of like going all the way back to like doing the initial drawings and things again.
Right.
I always wanted to have to do concept art. Like I visited Pixar one time, and their front lobby is full of all these big, beautiful concept art pages, and I'm like, oh, I want that. I want to be able to have the wall that's covered in all the different concepts and everything. But it turns out like mocking stuff up in Blender is, you know, in 3D where you can just duplicate a thing and rotate and all that is actually easier for me than like drawing. Right. So
it is and it isn't. You know, like one thing about illustration and concept in general is like just the ramp up to get good is so time consuming, because it requires you to sort of like understand, apart from understanding, you know, perspective, lighting, and all of those things all together, just a lot of practice. Like really, that's really what it is. And I think with 3D specifically, it kind of gives you a little bit of a shortcut, because, you know, perspective, yeah, you have to understand it, but it's kind of do the work for you already. Lighting, yes, you need to understand what makes for good lighting, but it kind of does it for you as well.
Yeah.
So, but you know what? To your point, however, you know, I feel like we're slowly getting to times where, and your work is almost embodiment of it, where you can create concept art level, if not more, work in similar amount of time that you would do in drawing. And it's I think with 3D and what you do specifically and Blender in particular, we're approaching the times where you can get like really, really awesome quality work in fairly short amount of time if you do it right. So even though, like, let's say, you know, like you said, you know, maybe bashing things together, like I always wish to draw, like be able to draw, that's by itself as a skill, but then having a skill to kind of pick the right tools to make things look awesome in the short amount of time, I feel that's a skill by itself.
Well, like if I knew how to block something in like, you know, the gray cubes or whatever, and then take it into Photoshop and do that photo collage type bashing thing, that just seems like that would be the best, most efficient workflow for just trying to be like, this is what's in my head. Now you can see it. And then if you wanted, you could reproject that back onto the 3D geometry and just kind of do this iterative process, which seems like that would just be like raw power. But yeah, no, I agree. The tools for being able to just lay out 3D shapes, especially if you're trying to do like multiple renders or like explore. I get so impressed when I see the concept artwork that's like here's the top view, here's the front view, and here's the side view, and it has like weird organic shapes and stuff in it, and I'll just keep looking back and forth between the three, like how did their head do this? This is so impressive.
Right. But meanwhile, you can just ZBrush it and then just render.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
But
it's interesting, you know, because like I came up from illustration, so to me I'm almost always been driven, like I'm a kind of driving away from illustration in a way. I still love to do that, and actually driving away is the wrong way to say it, but I'm less impressed or less invested into like this realistic photo bashing, like pushing the envelope of lighting and whatnot, and more sort of like on the drawing and 2D space, more back to the sort of like the roots of drawing.
yeah.
But then again, what pushes me in terms of software, hardware, and technology in general, I'm kind of pushing more towards animation, sort of like where you come from.
Yeah.
Versus like when, you know, talking to you right now, you are from the animation sort of like background and 3D background, and you're more interested in drawing and concept art, which is kind of fascinating. I feel like those two fields are so close now and almost merging, you know?
Yeah. Honestly, 2D is like you were saying, like with 3D, it's if you have, you know, a high dynamic range, you know, HDRI environment for natural lighting and a ground plane, and then you can download, you know, object packs from anywhere and put a thing together. All you have to learn is how to navigate in 3D space, and you can make, you know, you can be making good looking renders in a day. Like it's as opposed to you try doing that with like, you know, figure drawing or something, and it's like no, you need years and years and years of stuff being no good. And so that's where like knowing, and I think I like that about that. I like that the technology is fairly accessible. Same with like filmmaking in general. It used to be, you know, you had to have like rich parents if you wanted to be making movies when you were a kid. And now it's like, yeah, all the kids have their little phones. You can shoot anything on your phone, and that's the thing I keep trying to do too with the tutorials, is make sure they can work for cell phones. Just because then that's the low, like anybody can get a pencil and paper and be drawing stuff. And so having it not be that sort of weird, like a class thing. I don't know. My words aren't great, but anybody now can have like a camera, or at least even if you're very, very poor, you have a friend who has like a cell phone with a, you know, a camera on it. Which are honestly, those cameras are vastly better than anything we were using back in the 90s. Those little handy cams, like, yeah.
Night
and
day.
So the fact that those are like just super ubiquitous now, and the tools for editing and all that can all be free. I love that, and I love that there's this big video dump of like YouTube and Vimeo. It's just everything's just sitting there. I wish we had better tools kind of for sifting it, for kind of organizing it. Because right now it is just so algorithm based, and either you're blessed by the algorithm, or it kind of, you've got to figure out somebody to kind of come down and be like, hey, look at this video, where it'll just, you know, disappear. But yeah, that's really cool to me.
Yeah, you're in the hands of YouTube gods when it comes to like discoverability, and then like as you said, sifting through, is it the right material to learn from? Because it's one thing just to have a lot of material for free, you know, being able to find those videos versus, you know, okay, is it something right for me to learn from, you know?
Oh, I wasn't even talking like tutorial. I was just talking like people making short films and stuff. But
but that applies too, I feel. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. So yeah, you're primarily, seems like from animation, and then 3D is obviously like, I guess, almost like a no-brainer at this point. If you want to do animation, 3D is kind of the best way to approach it, unless you're like, hey, I want to do Pixar, you know, frame by frame, but that's like almost completely different craft. But in filmmaking, 3D. So when you were learning that stuff, did you have like a specific goal, like, oh, I really like doing VFX, or I would want to be a filmmaker? Was there any like underlying idea behind pushing towards, or was it just, hey, I just love doing this shit, and I'm just gonna keep doing whatever I love doing?
It was since I was like 11 or something. Yeah, it's always been in the interest of finishing a film.
Hmm.
And so I come up with these really ambitious, usually pretty bad films, and then I will just spend years. Like right now, I'm trying to finish up the first episode. I've had this personal web series since like 2011. I
Hmm.
started with a friend, Scott Hampson, and I think we released our last episode. Like we did one last year. The one before that was like 5 years before that. It's just very, very slow, and it's gotten to the point now where I still want to finish up the story, but I don't want to make people watch stuff I made, a decade ago, in order
Right.
to watch what I'm doing now. And so we're kind of rebooting a little bit. And I've spent, I think, 16, 17, 18 months on like the first episode, which is not an efficient way to make a web series at all. But
Nope.
it's been fun. And in doing that, it's like I've learned so much. And so, but it always like, if I'm just doing visual effects tests or something, or like just a thing that I could throw on the internet, like look at me, I did this thing, I'd feel weird about it. But if it's like, it's always in the interest of me trying to make a film or like tell a story, and that's a fun
Yeah.
umbrella for everything to fit under. So it doesn't just feel like I'm doing tests or whatever. I'm like, no, I'm working on a thing. And like music and vibe, and having to explore with like the way things work, come across to an audience, and the way things work in the broader context. It lets you use your entire brain, and there's all these different aspects to it that I find just really really engaging. But yeah, definitely the part where I kind of tend to hyper focus and just sit there for days at a time tends to be the CG thing, where I'll get in the zone. I'm like, now I'm just making the environment, turning my brain off, as opposed to like, I've been trying to finish up some editing stuff. And with editing, you have uh, ideally you shoot with the edit in mind, and so as you're editing each shot how it'll all kind of lay together, and then you can just edit
Yeah.
it really easily. But I did a few scenes where I just kind of got coverage. I just filmed the scene from a few different angles, and I'm trying to construct the scene after the fact. And I'll get in there and I'll try for like 40 minutes to edit the thing, and I'm like, whew, okay, and I'll come back to that in a few days. And so yeah.
Yeah, I'm starting to get a sense of it myself because I'm working on my short film.
Really?
Yeah, the Showtime, and oh man, the whole process, just yeah, it's a completely different world than just painting. It's yeah, from starting with your storyboards and the idea, and then like somewhere down the road you realize you hate all of it.
Oh
I was like,
no.
oh, I
Yeah,
need to.
that happens.
Well, I don't hate it particularly like the process, because like the short film is something that I always wanted to make, and I'm feeling so happy where it's going and all of those things. But like once you look at the same shot over and over and over and over and
Oh
over
yeah.
and over, it's like I'm done with it, but it's not done. But I'm done with it.
And then the
Yeah, it's
moment where you're
just
like, this has been 2 years of my life, and this is just a thing someone will scroll through as they're sitting on like a toilet or something. Like, is that worth it? And it's like, something's got to be worth it. So
right.
yeah, why not this? But
Yeah, what do you think this is all go? I mean, because like I remember like some of my good friends would put all that effort into making short films. Ash is like one of my best friends, Ash Thorpe, and he did the Epoch and Akira Awaken, and he did like a bunch of short films. And there were some projects that he did that were pretty quick.
mhm.
It would require a lot of work, but it were pretty quick. And others that was just like I could tell that, oh fuck, like he's just like he loves doing it, and he's investing himself in doing it, but like just hates that it takes so much time. Like Akira is a good example where he would spend like a year and a half, I think, on that whole thing. And
Ah,
because we talk all the time, and I get behind the scenes of pretty much everything he does all the time. It would be like almost like a wave of like, I'm feeling awesome, this is going in the right direction, and then like I fucking hate everything, the software's crashing. It's just like, and it's awesome, I love this new shot, the software's crashing, fucking hate this thing.
well, there's in that, because that was a really cool project. I think he says a quote that I think of kind of often, which is about the infusing the energy into
Mhm.
into a thing, and that's just kind of like there. And I think there's a lot of that's true. Like if you do spend months, years of your life working on one project at the end. Like that, I don't know. I'll work on random things sometimes, and I'll kind of like let myself go a little bit nuts with it.
Right.
And that's just kind of a thing I tell myself of like, no, I'm just. It's like a potential energy. It's like putting drops up behind the dam, and then you just have that up there. And at some point, if you need to, you can kind of like open a spigot and kind of let it come out. Like I made a social media account for like a fake like cyberpunk takeout service, and for years I made this whole, all of these random posts. I made a website, all of that, and that's just like sitting there. And at some point I can like embed a link or something in a project, and people can be like, wait, what is this? Can you go there? And they'll go there and like, there's this social media account that's like 6 years old. How does this exist? But like knowing that it's kind of just in my back pocket a little bit is like,
Right.
that's kind of fun. Or like, if I spend a long time making a specific asset, I've rarely ever regretted that, having just an overbuilt asset, because it means I've just got more little kit bash options, at the end, or I can like give it away to other people working on stuff, or like, yeah,
Right.
I've rarely regretted the amount of time I've spent on a thing. I just wish I could kind of optimize stuff a little bit better.
Yeah, it seems like software and hardware is slowly getting there where the obstacles are being removed and we have more creative control. That's what I was getting at. A couple of years ago, you would make a short film, and like you said, like maybe someone's flicking through like feed, just gonna see it, taking a shit on the toilet, and that's about it. But like it's easier and easier to make films. That's why I asked you early on, whether you were always focused on sort of like a technical point of view or more like a storytelling filmmaking. It seems like the latter is something that drives you the most. Where do you think this is all going? Because like, and I'm not talking personally, but just in general, because it seems like it's becoming easier and easier, but also means more people can get into it. How do you feel like this whole industry is going to change? Because like filmmaking always been, like you said, you had to have rich parents to make films. Now we can record them on pretty much anything. The same goes with CG. Back in the days, if you want to do like something really good in 3D, it would take so much resources and computing power. Like that alone was a huge barrier of entry.
Now you just need a laptop.
Right. Like even the phone now, like I've read those statistics of, like the benchmarks for iPhones, the new iPhones. I mean, I know they are not cheap, but the new iPhones are vastly superior to a computer that I had like 6 years ago.
Really?
Yeah. It's like, what?
Wow. I don't know. There's always, I've got weird thoughts around like VR, because on one hand, it's this, at least at this point, it's kind of inescapably, you put a thing on your head, you clear out all of the space, and you look like an idiot in front of a bunch of other people. And that's, I think until that aspect changes, I don't know.
That's,
I wonder if I lost you.
No, I'm here. I'm still here. That's something I need to fix, by the way. Like my webcam, because I use two cameras, one for the podcast and one for just, as a webcam, and the webcam camera is just overheating.
Oh, gotcha.
Right.
And I think things want to go in kind of a VR direction, because that's where, especially with all of the, maybe it's just kind of where I'm sitting, and like all of the tools that are immediately around me with like the motion capture and the environment and the real-time rendering and all of that all seems so perfect for a virtual reality type workflow or an augmented reality situation. But at the same time, until people can VR while sitting on the toilet, I don't see it really
VR on
game changing. Yeah, I don't really see everything. Everybody's always thinking, oh, it's gonna go over into VR. And I don't know. There's like a whole, I don't want to turn my head all the time. I don't want to watch the ships fly over me like this all the time. I like, and maybe this is just me, sounding like an old man, but I kind of like the language of cinema, of composition, and
right.
And it's, you can do certain things like that, but I feel like if you want, to have that kind of interesting composition like we're used to in cinema or something. You would be artificially restricting the view anyways
Right.
by locking the character down or having them look through a window and all of that. And like if that's the case, then why aren't you just doing like a 3D movie? That said, I saw 1917 last year, and I really, did you see that one?
Oh yeah, it's great.
I really enjoyed that, and that was. Did you see? I did like a 2.5 minute like one shot thing.
I might have missed that. I mean, you've done so many videos. I've watched a bunch of them. I watched like half of them. Maybe I've seen it.
It's I think you'd remember. It was it's the thing I spent the first 2 or 3 months of 2020 on, and I let myself just go.
Dynamo Dream teaser. The teaser,
yeah, where she gets in the elevator and does the whole little deal.
Yeah. I've seen that. It's awesome.
That was
awesome.
I'm glad. That was me kind of being like, all right, let's push this workflow as far as I can kind of take it, and to get all the real time stuff. Like I had her in 3D space walking through this entire environment. And I was able to work, in the real time engine, like texturing and matching lighting. She's walking around and doing all of that like in real time. And then I hit play, and she'd walk over to the elevator, and I'm like, oh, I should pause it, and I'd work on that. And like that was such a crazy futuristic feeling way to work that like just doing that next final step into like a full 3D type thing. I feel like we're almost there.
Right.
To get her into that 3D space was like a hell of a project, and so I feel like that's the final bit that has to become simplified a little bit, and
sure,
I think we're almost there.
I want to dive into that actually. I'm not necessarily on a technical level, because like we could talk for hours in terms of like how you construct your shots and what kind of techniques you use and whatnot. I'm more interested in your like thinking process when it comes to that, because like when I saw that thing you did, and it's called the Dynamo Dream teaser.
Mm-hmm.
That's the 2.5 minute sort of thing. One of the things that was striking to me right away, ignoring all the technical level of it, right? But what you did there easily competes with a lot of like, even like some of the Netflix production, I hate to say, like some of the Netflix productions, some of like the TV and on demand high budget stuff. It seems like why why were like, I wonder why some of the studios pay so much money to hire like large amount of people, and then someone like yourself come out and, oh, here, check this out, I did it in a couple of months, all by myself with friends, on the budget. And that's where I feel like, the technology kind of allows us to get there. But I'm wondering, like, what is your whole process with this? Like, I know you want to do, you're mostly driven by story and like by the idea of like, hey, I want to make my own sort of, films and whatnot. Like, what do you think this is going for you in general? In terms of like, hey, I want to do like, I don't know, like I'm kind of walking around words, I guess, at this moment, kind of losing my thought, but
like where would I like to kind of see all of this stuff kind of
go like
to?
For you specifically, are you planning for like a is it supposed to be like a film that you're working on, or you're just sort of like experimenting with like short, small bite-sized ideas of like, hey, like I have this character and I want to build a story around it, do like a quick shots, or like where do you think this is all going for you?
My whole life experience has changed so much in like the past year and a half that I have no idea anymore. But I do know that was the goal for a long time. Is I was like, oh, I'd love to work with Netflix or something and see if they could produce like a show. And I'm realizing like I've been in opportunities like that in the past, and usually I don't come up with anything particularly good, and that's because I'm not a great writer, and like at best I can work reiteratively, where I'll be like, I don't like that, I don't know what I would like, but I'll just try 1,000 ideas until I come up with something. And then like, a month later I see something and I go, oh, that could work for that. And I'm like, I'll just spend forever working on a thing. And if somebody was just like, all right, write an entire, season or an entire movie or something, just right from the get-go, I feel like again, I've been working on this one episode for the past like 18 months, and I've been shooting it the entire time. We'll get a thing, and then I'm like, ooh, let's hop back over on the green screen. We'll get this one little bit for like the beginning, and and so the entire thing is there'll be a finished script when the episode's finished, and that means that if somebody just came and was like, hey, here's $1 million to make a thing, I'm nervous that like my iterative workflow I wouldn't know how to do that.
Right.
And so that was always, and maybe I could just figure that out. I haven't actually tried to write like a legit script in 7 years, 8 years. I have no idea. Maybe I can do it better now, but I do know that was always I stopped making that a goal effectively. And so in the situation where I'm at right now is honestly, it's the dream situation. I've just been giddy like all the time because I get to work on the stuff that I want to do, and then that kind of helps just support itself. But it takes forever, and there's like the thing I love so much about the Dynamo Dream teaser is I was able to work on every tiny little detail and kind of make it so it feels like you're kind of there a little bit of like, and the sound team went so nuts with all of that audio, and that was the thing that really got me excited about that. I was like, okay, can we make this kind of feel like it's a little bit of an immersive thing? But there's something else too of just like the feeling of knowing characters, and you get that so much more from like long form shows where you're watching the characters kind of do stuff, and they have the pacing to have those quiet moments. And I'll never be able to tap into that if it takes me 2 years to put out like a 5-minute film. And so I guess that's the final thing I would love, is to figure out some way to speed stuff up. And I guess that means working with other people, which is I never made money off of my personal stuff. And so I could never really afford to bring anybody else on to work on it. But I guess that's the dream then, is do it and then also be able to bring in enough money that I could speed stuff up.
Yeah. Do you think like going in the route of working with studios is even something that is necessary anymore? Like we've talked about your Patreon to begin with. What I've noticed, generally speaking, people like it's not easy to build a following, meaning like get people excited about the kind of work you do. But I think the moment you are, as long as you're genuine about what you do, you will slowly build up to a point where it becomes sustainable, especially if you have like the quality of the work that you're presenting is there. I think there's an entertainment aspect to it as well, but I mean, I don't think you need to work on that. You're already freaking entertaining as hell. I mean, your YouTube kind of shows it already. But yeah, it's not, I feel like, as you said, like sometimes because what you said about this, like, let's say sound design, you get the sound design from the people you work with on this thing. I'm assuming most of them are your friends actually as well, and like that got you excited, like, oh, like this world now becomes more immersive and whatnot. When you work with the studio, it might be like a sound design that comes in, and then you have to like share ideas with the producer that was like, oh yeah, I don't like that, like let's change it. And so like you lose the control and sort of like the soul, almost like a soul of it. It's like it becomes a product rather than something that you're really excited about.
No, it's true. Yeah. Right now I don't have to compromise at all. And I should give more of a shout out to the sound team. They're this Seattle sound group called Impossible Acoustic, and they're like, I've been working with them for, I don't know, like 11 or 12 years, and just every time I've worked with a bunch of different sound people, and normally they just like, if they see a thing happening on the screen, they'll make the sound for the thing, and it's like, we did it, we designed the sound, we'll kind of mix it. But there's this whole other element to it, which is like sound dictates the vibe so much, where it's literally another layer of like direction on top of the entire thing. How many off-camera sounds do you hear at any given moment? How does that make you feel kind of like overwhelmed and overstimulated, or like? And they know how to walk that balance. And so by the time you get it back, it like it feels different than the footage you sent them. It has this whole other layer, and like that's so cool, and like that's something that only they've ever like really done.
Yeah. Once you get that, sound does a lot, right? Like same with visuals, and like and sometimes, like, I mean, we could go on and on. Like turning illustration into animation, that by itself changes the vibe completely. Then making animation that looks cool. Once you add sound, like, oh my god, that's like, now it's completely different.
Yeah.
It's funny because like just yesterday I got a sound, like the sound mixing and design for my short.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this part of the short that I have, the way that it was cut, it was just like, it's just not working. You know, I was just like looking at it all the time. It had a music track on it, and so was, you know, the way I work with this short, I'm cutting to a track basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the beats are correct, and you know, it feels like it's engaging and whatnot. But this part was like, fuck, I don't know, like the shots are there, but just the way it's cut, it's not working. And then I got the sound design, which
they made it work.
It just made it. Oh, this is my favorite thing now.
Oh,
like I don't have to edit
great.
anything. It's just the way sound completely flipped the script on that thing. It's like, oh yeah, okay. Now I have to like revisit the shots themselves to make them work with the sound. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the whole decision of like, do you start with, like, I always love it when people can start with music and you get to design the entire scene kind of like around a music piece. Or like working with like talented composers. I do like that, where you get to describe the scene to them, and then they'll make the music, and then you kind of get to do that, as opposed to like giving them the scene and being like, here, now just try to make something that kind of happens to like fit
right.
this. And even a more iterative type of process, I think is so cool, just because it affects it so much. And like so much of audio is we just treat it as a pass, kind of like, and now there's the sound checkbox, and it's like, no, that isn't a checkbox, that's an integral part of the entire thing.
Right.
Are you doing like an animated short or like live action? Or
anime?
Cool.
Yeah. I'll show you some glimpses after we finish.
Oh, very cool.
But yeah, it's a process. You know, that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk with you, because, you know, I've seen, you know, apart from just seeing the tutorials you do, which are hilarious, like the way, like, it's on beat. You're just like, you have that entertainment aspect that I feel like if you did like an hour of it, it would be like, it's too much, you know.
For like a minute
almost. Because it would be just like, you would be exhausted from like how entertained you are, rather than like, it's just, it's too much knowledge, it's like too much of it. No, you found like a perfect formula. But then like what you do also in terms of like your filmmaking, because I looked at some of your behind the scenes and like just the creative ways of you know, approaching the shots and whatnot, like doing it in, you know, as you said, like you're turning a church into a studio where like all the shots are done, all that stuff. But there was this filmmaker, I can't remember his name, but like what you do reminds me a little bit of what he does. He did those short horror films. The one was I think Lights Out, where this lady walks in the corridor and like she turns off the light and there's a shadow.
I know his name.
I think that's, and I feel very embarrassed. I can't remember his name right now. I think it was like David something.
Let's see.
Because he was actually, I think, one of the first like
David Sandberg. Yeah, that might be him. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he did that, and then he did Shazam, and he's just had a great
that's him
for years, and
he did Annabelle and Lights Out and Shazam. Yeah, that's the guy. Yeah, he did he did all of those small, you know, short films. I think the Lights Out was the one that kind of stood out because it was just like, it was one of those, you know, horror short films that kind of describes everyone else's fears, like seeing like weird shadows in, you know, and sort of like playing on the regular fears of people, but then like making them into horrors instead of like a random crap scare of monsters. You know, this is just like, like everyone is scared of that. I've had that when I was a kid, you know, that kind of deal.
And the implementation was just so perfect.
Right. Yeah.
Like you look at it and your brain's just like, yeah, that's how that works, with like the edit right on the light switch. It was so good.
Yeah, it was really good. And the way he just like jerry-rigged everything together, you know, just like that's why yeah, your work kind of reminds me of his a little bit, because like when you're approaching your shots, like you're finding those smart ways of like how can I do this without spending like unnecessary amount of money, you know, basically speaking.
Well, that's one of the reasons I didn't enjoy doing, you know, like contract, like freelance, whatever stuff, just because whenever I'm working, I'm usually trying to find that path of least resistance, where it's like, ooh, doing it like this means I'd have to spend like a week of figuring stuff out. But if I just kind of do it like this, then I'm just done. And you can't control that when somebody's hiring you. A lot of times they're like, well, just, you know, do it the right way. And you go, yeah, that's a week of stuff. And they're like, yeah, that's why we hired you. And you go, oh, okay. And I just always found that very frustrating. I like to be able to kind of like follow that greasy trail. Yeah. And yeah, I always forget. And the moment I get back into the contract type stuff, it's just, yeah, it's always immediately like, oh, all right. And here's 3 days of rotoscoping. Yeah, that's the job.
Yeah, that's true. You know, one of the things that I feel like I appreciate a lot when I see artists doing that is like just becoming independent and sort of showing the way that, you know what, you don't have to work for big studios and answer to what kind of stuff they want to see. Like you can literally make your own stuff, and as long as it's entertaining and has value that people are after, then why not, you know? And I think it also gives an opportunity to like the people that are naysayers and they always find holes in everything. It's like, hey, just do it yourself. Now you have a chance, you know? Here's your avenue. Like you can do it. There is a bunch of artists that are doing it. Like the proof is in the pudding. Just do it, you know?
There's a weird thing that I found just in terms of like seeing random naysayers, just like jerks on the internet. And it's that like basically all of the people I've ever met who I considered like my creative role models, or like who've succeeded in the industry or whatever, they're all the very nicest, most excited people. And I think it's great that it actually like tends to work out like that. Like, and it's the same for if I see somebody's stuff, it's just like there's usually this respect of the energy and the effort it takes to like go into a thing. And like, that's kind of first and foremost, is it's like, I can see all of the love and passion that like went into this. And that is like the most important. And yeah, every once in a while you run into some comment or something where somebody's like just pointing out, you know, everything they don't like about a thing or whatever. And it's just kind of like, oh man, that's not the point though.
Right.
Like it all has to come from this fuel of kind of like excitement, I think. And that's been really fun, like meeting people like you, and like, yeah, it's just been very fun.
Yeah. There's always something about like highly creative, well, not necessarily highly creative, but like when you talk with people in the industry, especially the ones that are like the most prolific, and when you get an opportunity to talk with them, because like a lot of times you reach out to someone and they are just too busy. They're just like too busy, and they just get too many requests like yours to answer. But when you get that opportunity to talk with them, like as you said, it's almost always positive, almost always like, hey man, this is awesome what you like. And they are always encouraging. That's one of the things I like about America. You know, I moved from Europe.
Really?
10 years ago. Yeah, I'm Polish.
Oh, cool.
And that's one of like a culture shocks when I moved here, is that, you know, everyone is kind of out of your way, meaning they don't care what you do most of the time, which is a good and a bad thing sometimes, because sometimes it just brings that, you know, sort of like weird bubble shield of, you know, sort of like people are being oblivious to one another. I guess there's just a less sense of community that I feel, but that might be just like cultural differences.
Mm-hmm.
But that aspect of like just encouraging, like, hey man, you do you, like just go ahead and make it happen. Like that was the biggest sort of like positive that I found when I moved here. Oh yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
That was just a giant influence. Because like most, like in, you know, maybe it's changing now, but when I was growing up, everyone was telling me that, what the fuck you're doing? Like, you're wasting your time, you know? It's weird. Weird stuff. But yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, I feel like going back to the main subject, like, I think this is the perfect time where if you want to create something, filmmaking specifically, I mean, there are other avenues as well, but like filmmaking, the tools are all there for you to grab. And even like financing becomes slow. I mean, it's not maybe ideal right now, but it's slowly becoming a reality where you don't have to have a giant studio or even just a studio or like investment from someone, like, I don't know, like a big company or whatever, that invests a ton of money, and then you gather a team and then make things happen. Now you kind of can, you know, almost like crowdfund your project.
Oh yeah. And even I mean, a couple of years ago, all of the streaming services were buying up any idea they could think of. I think they've kind of slowed down on that now. And like a couple of years before, they were all trying to start their own, you know, like small web type studios, and then they decided like, oh, let's just buy stuff from people. And I don't know where things are at now, but I feel like if you're kind of quick on your toes and can kind of see where the money's trying to go, you can probably figure out how to get your stuff made more so than, I think, I don't know. There was a period where the whole wild west of the internet and like that type of like, you know, content creation was meaning that a lot of people with money were just trying anything. And I don't know if things have kind of like normalized. I worked on a film called Prospect. And like that went to Sundance or South by Southwest. And yeah, they were saying like a couple of years before, like Netflix would have immediately just like bought it. There would have been this like bidding war because everything is just trying to get content. And then in like the 2 years since, they'd all shifted over into just making all of their own stuff. And so nobody was really just trying to pick up films from and seeing how quickly that type of stuff changes has been really wild. But yeah, being able to crowdsource, being able to find specifically your audience and just try to make stuff for them. You can kind of like hyper focus who your audience is. Right. And yeah, I think is very cool. I've been trying I brought it up multiple times, the whole sounding like an old man thing. It was because like so many techniques and things that I use, they change all the time. The technology is changing all the time. And so part of the way I work has to always be trying out the newest, latest tools and never feeling as if I've like figured the thing out. And like machine learning, you know, that's gonna be absolutely huge. Like you throw that at some footage, suddenly you don't have to green screen or like, you know, key or motion track anymore. It can just figure all of that out. You can just click on a person and they're isolated and you have a camera tracking around them. And so it's like, whoa, we have photo scanning programs that can just like create CG versions of real life objects. You're just going to be able to walk around and point and click and mix and match and all of that. And trying to kind of make sure that my position isn't too well situated in one of these technologies that's going to become obsolete from machine learning. Is a legitimate like thing I put effort into. And I think, you know, the best thing to do is just like figure out how to use as many of these different things as tools as possible. And so it's like no matter how the technology changes, it's not about, you know, any specific technology. It's about being able to put them all together to make a thing happen. But Sorry.
No. Keep going.
Oh no, I'm finished.
No, it's just usually the lag on, like there's a little lag on Skype, and it's like, oh, is he done or not? Awkward silence. You know what I mean? But anyways, no, I agree with you 100%. I would say, yeah, like the AI and the machine learning in general, it's something that it's certainly taking away a lot of like niche, or not niche, but like a lot of mechanical jobs and mechanical sort of like approaches to things, which I feel like it obviously, if you're sort of narrowing down in those spaces, then you're in trouble. But if you can sort of like always shift away and like dabble in different things, and and figure out a way to learn new things, that kind of gets you a little bit of more immunity against ever-changing technology. What is your approach on that? Actually, I mean, you kind of said what your approach is, but what do you think about this sort of? How would you find a balance between, okay, always learning new things, because learning new things is time consuming. It always takes time to sort of like understand new technology. Sometimes it's just a day, sometimes it's a few hours, sometimes it could be weeks until you master it enough, right? But like, as you're ever learning new things, it always take away the time that you could spend practicing what you've learned, right?
Yeah.
And then there's also an aspect of mastery, meaning like, all right, I've learned this thing and now I can master it to a point where it's not just the thing I've learned, but I can use it on like a really high level as a tool for filmmaking or animation or whatever. What's your approach to that? Like, what do you think? How do you strike that balance?
Usually I try to I don't do a lot of just random tests. I usually try to flow it into like a big final project as quickly as possible. Right. Which I think is a fun way to do it. One, because it means I never feel like I'm like just killing time experimenting. Mm-hmm. And two, it helps keep me excited because I'm doing stuff I've never, done before with kind of new tools. And it also means, it can kind of be a showcase, for myself, for like what the thing is possible, what it's capable of. And so, I usually, I guess that's basically the answer. I don't do a lot of just like motion tests and things like that.
So basically like project-based learning in a way, like you're, okay, this tool is awesome. How can I use it for that project that I'm on right now? Without compromising, deadlines, time, and whatever.
Yeah, and there's also there's this other component that where when a new tool comes out, they'll usually release like a demo or something like that, and then that demo becomes the thing everybody associates with that tool. Or right. A lot of times, like Blender's getting new features and stuff all the time, and they'll show like a example case, like, hey, and you can do this. And a lot of times people just kind of like look at that and they go, oh, okay. And like, obviously whatever the demo is usually taken as the highest possibility for like what that tool can do. But a lot of times it's just like that was just a developer like throwing some stuff together to be like, hey, see this. And so it's fun when new tools come out to kind of just stop for a minute and be like, okay, what else does this remind me of? What else is like, could this do that isn't just like the demo case? And I always have a lot of fun with that question of like, what can this do that isn't just like the obvious thing?
Yeah, finding like creative way of using that tool instead of just using like a pretty much a template case.
Yeah. How about you? Do you has your workflow changed a whole bunch over the years?
I feel
like illustration's probably slightly more protected from that.
Yes and no. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know where it's all going. I used to think that as the industry is changing, more people are getting from like traditional illustration to digital illustration to 3D to like VR and all those things, like ever changing sort of goal pole, right? Like ever changing sort of like the bare minimum of what you need to do, and how technology was basically driving what artists were doing. I think that used to be a case for many years, and it's slowly changing and more balancing towards you know what matters more is creativity, and then the tools sort of become secondary. A good example would be Instagram, where you look at some of the artists that post on Instagram and gain a lot of following, you know, a lot of popularity, and therefore make a living doing that from basically areas of art that in entertainment a few years ago you would think are dead or slowly dying, right? Like traditional drawing would be a good example. Like a few years ago you would consider anyone who's drawing traditionally, including myself, like I was saying, like if you're not learning 3D, it might be a death sentence if you're going into like entertainment industry, which now, like looking back at how things are changing, obviously I cannot foresee a future, so and I make mistakes myself, and sort of like I could admit that thinking, like I don't think that way anymore. Meaning I maybe think that way towards just entertainment industry, specifically like if you want to work in films. But now there are the avenues, and there's so many of them, that hey, like you can actually make a living doing this stuff without working in films, or you can work in films and maybe be one of those sort of like, you know, personalities attached to it, right? Like you're creating like a demo that is sort of like becoming a marketing material for a film or whatever, right? I mean, there are still directors and production designers that like traditional work, don't get me wrong, so it's not like completely dead, but most of the film production is basically photo bashing and quick work, right? But now it's changed. Like I feel like you can, as long as your interest, like whatever you do is interesting and creative, and you have interesting personality, sometimes not even personality, but just like the work you do is interesting, you can make a living doing that, no matter what that is. I feel it's going that direction more. And I mean, AI, whether AI is going to change, unless AI starts like drawing traditionally better than like most of us, then we're all fucked. But I think that's not going to happen in our lifetime. And if it does, I think we're going to see a writing on the walls soon enough that we will know that we need to adapt. And honestly, you know, I think other industries will get affected by machine learning to a degree where even if you're like living under the rock and you don't want to change the way you work as an artist, you'll be alarmed by seeing like how the industry around you is changing in terms of like, you know, whether it's like autopilot cars, or, you know, no clerks in shops and delivery of groceries, like all that like weird stuff that you would normally associate with you know, having a workforce, right? I think those things will change first, and then once you see it is changing, most people will realize that, you know, there's never a status quo, and you kind of always have to sort of like evolve and learn.
I think it.
Yep,
yeah. I think it's interesting. Yeah, just the degree to which like Instagram is an environment where just a bunch of people are throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks, and the way you actually can see like who's kind of doing this to get just like internet attention, and who's doing this as an outlet for like something they've been working on for, you know, years and years and years, and, you know, kind of mixing and matching. But I think that's actually one of the best things about Instagram has just been like for traditional artists having a platform where I feel their work does get attention and respect in a way that like I feel is I don't know, that's one of my favorite things about it. A bunch of my feed is just like people doing ink drawings where they just start drawing a face with just like a pen on a page, and I'm like, what is this? How do you do this? And I've also, you know, like I see so many of like the Beeple clones where people are trying to do the like the render every day thing, and oh geez,
I just had Beeple. We just recorded a podcast right before this one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But I agree. Yeah, Beeple clones, man. There's so many of them. Holy crap.
And it's like the stuff I was talking about, like an hour ago of like, yeah, you can learn lighting, camera, get a render or a object pack from somewhere, stick it all together, and make those types of renders so quickly. And there's certain people you can kind of see they're exploring ideas. And that's honestly, that's what sets Beeple apart. That's why he's always the one like setting the trends, is because he's actually exploring ideas. He's always, you can see it. He's always got like a little thing that he's trying to he's just exploring, and that's what makes his stuff so engaging to me. I loved like he would shift it in a new direction, and everybody's kind of trying to play catch up. Like, oh, we're doing like flowers now, and then like and then like 6 months ago he veers over into like Obama's big-breasted lactation Buzz Lightyear Hillary Clinton machine. He's like, do this, punks, and everybody's like, what? It was so good.
Yep, that's Beeple. Yep.
Oh, jeez. What's he doing now? He's just doing regular stuff now, I think.
I had an interesting conversation with him earlier, and I guess people who are listening to this now can probably check the previous episode that I did with Beeple. It's
I'm
probably
gonna check it out.
Yeah. His approach is like he just flows, kind of does his own stuff, and never gets too attached to. I'm obviously paraphrasing, but I think the way he is approaching things is just like most of the artists, they like to have that purity of like creating high quality art and and hitting the marks of what interests them the most, but then also having like the purity of it, like, oh, this is a fantasy or a sci-fi or this or that, right? There's always like a theme, and obviously for most of us that's just our interest. We like doing that. He has this interesting approach with like, I sometimes I just like to fuck around and like see what clicks with people, and sometimes just even finding what which of that stuff is actually bridging that art community with mainstream, So that was just like the take that I got from him when it comes to that. So like seeing his like that Tom Hanks picture of Tom Hanks punching like a Corona monster. Like,
oh yeah.
But it's so timely, and it's just cool. It's just like he just finds those ideas, and it's like, as you said, it's just like for me it's just ideas. Like that's what I'm exploring right now. Yeah,
I love he does
Mickey
that.
Mouse. Mickey Mouse with like 6 tits, freaking people milking. It's like, what's going on?
And it's like you want to look at it because like, there's this. Does this have some sort of like meaning? And it's like on some sort of like subconscious level, like he's playing around with all these ideas. It's like, yeah, probably. Yeah. Like there are actual ideas kind of like bouncing around, but at the same time, it's like I don't know. It's he's one of the few artists where it's like the everyday thing I think actually like totally works, is like seeing all of his stuff as like a larger piece. And I very much enjoy it. I was going somewhere with that. I forget. But but every once in a while he like once a year or whatever, he just drops this other like masterpiece that like he did his what was it? The golden babies like punching each other. You see that one?
Oh, I don't know. I've most likely it's just the sheer volume of what he's releasing is just hard to keep up.
Oh man, yeah, it was great. It's like this. It's like a punch in the face. It's just this whole kind of like exploration.
I think I remember
of capitalism,
seeing it.
And he released all the project files and everything. It was great.
Yeah, he does those like larger mini projects where he has like a full video and like a looping video and then source files and all of that, basically, up there for grabs. He has a very interesting approach for sure. But yeah, coming back to what you were saying, like I think that's true. Like if you're able to sort of always evolve and look at where the industry, and like catch the wind. Okay, this is where it's going. I think the ability to be vigilant to how the industry is changing, and then taking steps towards, not necessarily like throwing yourself completely into something new and then abandoning what you've learned or knew already, but being aware and ready and like dabbling in things, and always like finding, okay, maybe this is not what I like, but maybe there's an aspect of it that I can implement in my work, and now this thing changes the workflow almost completely for me, and then changes the quality of the work like I do. Just like you said with the sound design, right? Like you have your film, and then sound design comes in. It's like, oh, that now it's different. It's not the same anymore. And you look at the filmmaking in a different way as well, because now all of a sudden sound becomes a crucial element of it, because now you're aware that sound is making a huge impact on it,
Yeah. I think too, like whenever a new feature or a new, add-on or whatever is kind of rolled out, it's as if you're gaining a new ability. And that's where it's like watching, tutorials is so fun, because you go from, I know nothing about this to, like, oh, I know Kung Fu. I can do this thing. I love watching tutorials for stuff that like I'm not even particularly interested in, just because it's that feeling is a little bit addicting. Like, oh, I can patch a hole in the wall now. I can work with plaster. That isn't so intimidating. Wonder if I can like frame in a wall. It's like, all right, in theory I could do it. I probably would make a horrible wall, but but like having that element of kind of play, where you're not just, trying to keep up on the tools, but because you're excited about what those tools mean you can do now in terms of like leveling up. What's crazy, I've had the same computer now for like I don't know, like 4 or 5 years, and all of like the tools have become more optimized, and so everything's running better on my computer now than it did like 4 years ago, just because the way programs can use the resources has become a lot more optimized. Right. So like my renders now are vastly faster and looking better on, as a motorcycle, on software that's getting, or hardware is getting out of date. I think that's really cool, and I'm curious how far that pattern's gonna go.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I have a computer that's a few years old too. Like I used to be always trying to catch up, like, oh, like my computer's getting slower, there's new software, there's new hardware, la la la. And then eventually, like, I think we're at the point where you don't, like, unless you're doing like cutting edge VFX with like high amounts of rendering on like, I don't know, like 8K maps and like some weird stuff. Not weird, but like, like cutting edge film quality,
crazy displacements.
Yeah. You don't need like cutting edge computer to do any work right now. Like pretty much any average PC or Mac would do the work, most of the work actually.
No, sure. I get asked so many times every day, just like, hey, what sort of workstation are you on? What specs? Like it really doesn't for anything in like the tutorials or anything you can do on any computer that still turns on, basically.
Yeah.
Like I think Blender 2.8 doesn't install on a computer older than 15 years old or something like that. But it's like, yeah, this is all, we're working low poly. It's all, if you're rendering crazy environments or something, sometimes you want a little bit more horsepower. But if you don't mind an overnight render, it's like you can do so much on anything. Yeah, because I was feeling that as soon as I got like my CPU and my GPU all ready, everybody was telling me they came out with new versions that are like 4 times faster. And I was like, no, I should have gotten the new versions. And I still probably should, but like I haven't suffered for it. Like computers are just fast now.
Yeah. Even the iPads are becoming like an amazing resource slowly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's I like where it's all going. I used to be more skeptical personally, like more quote unquote afraid that the pace of the change in technology is kind of making us always feel like we're on a treadmill of constantly learning new things.
That's true, yeah.
But on the other hand, I feel like it's opening up so many avenues at the same time. And I think once you change your mindset from, oh, I need to always catch up, to I need to acknowledge that learning is a new way, and learning the process and being able to adapt is more important than mastering the tools. I almost feel like. I don't know if you agree on with that.
I think I do, yeah. So I'm just trying to think of this in all the other different contexts of my life.
Yeah.
And because I keep bringing up that whole fear of being an old man, and I think that is very much tied to just like having this entire industry always just cruising whitewater rapids into new technology and all of that means that it never does feel like the ground is solid beneath your feet. And either jump into the next rock kind of becomes part of the game, or it could become kind of frustrating. But I think we're also going to a place where the tools are going to keep becoming more accessible. Like there's a Displayland app. Have you played around with that at all?
No.
It's this app on your phone, and you can just it uses both the accelerometer data and the video data to and it uploads it to a website. So you can just film an object with your phone. It uploads it, and by the time you get home, it'll have created a 3D model you can download. It's just on the go photo scanning.
Oh damn! Yeah, I'm looking at it. It's pretty incredible.
And it's great. It's really fun, and it's this perfect example of something like becoming. And when you use it, you start off, and it just starts showing you like a point cloud. And the longer you orbit the object, the more dense the point cloud becomes. So it's really like intuitive. And seeing the way tools like that come out, I think we're going to be getting a lot more of that of just these things where usually the threshold, what's the word, there was a threshold of whether you could use these tools or not, and that was the complexity of learning the tools. And I think as that goes away, we're going to start seeing a whole bunch of different work coming out, and I'm really excited for that. Like people who maybe could use those tools but like aren't predisposed to spend a weekend in front of a computer bashing their head against the wall. Like I think probably have a lot of cool creative ideas too, but they've been blocked out from some of these computer workflows for a minute.
Yeah. I wish what happened with AI, if there was AI like machine learning algorithm that learns how to make UI experience better.
Oh yeah.
Based on user input. Like, so, like let's say, because this is a great example. Like I'm looking at the Displayland, and with photogrammetry, usually you would have to bring like a beefy camera, make thousands of photos, and then get expensive software, plug it all in, and then wait for it to compute basically, and then tweak, and eventually you would get like a super dense mesh. But this is like almost like a McDonald's of photogrammetry in a way. It's like a quick to go, but it works. Like for most of the, like for concept art, this is just more than good enough,
for getting like real life clip art. It's just kind of how I think about it. Like, I just want to get this object. I haven't used a lot of it in production, just because like the final meshes do tend to kind of like have a bit of warble to them. You need pretty optimal situations. But just for like being able to bash together an environment, or like just grab a thing. You're like, there's an object. I want a digital version. Or being able to like get a scan of a room if you're doing visual effects and need to triangulate stuff later. Suddenly you have, like a triangulated room that you can just line everything up in, or use it as like a lighting tool. You put an object in there, and you set all of that to be kind of emissive, and you can actually be somewhat lighting your 3D object correctly in 3D space. There's a lot of cool stuff with technology like that, but just like it being one of the first examples of
no, this is absolutely fantastic. Imagine like future film productions, for instance, where film productions usually do scouting. They scout location. Now if they bring bring a tool like that, where they literally just, we needed to build 3D, now we can just freaking use the scanning that we did on the fly when we were there, you know? But even for concept art, like you were talking about the ability to use like kit bash elements and then overpainting, like this alone is already good enough for an average illustration. You find like an interesting model, maybe a sculpture, like, oh, this looks so cool and the lighting is perfect. You know, you just walk around it, like just get a 3D model and then you just plug it into your illustration. You don't even like, you just render it out and
oh yeah,
and then boom, you have an illustration, you know?
Yeah, I love the idea for location scouting.
Yeah, I feel like that's coming. I think that's gonna happen eventually. You know this whole thing with Unreal Engine and the digital sets. You've seen that stuff before, right? Yeah. That's I think that's sort of like that's where Epic Games came in and just like basically kicked the door out. Hey, green screen. Hey, green screen, get the fuck out. And then just kick the door out, and that's where, yeah, I think there's a ton of technology, the new technologies that are coming out that's going to be amazing, and they're just opening doors for artists to sort of like be creative and explore.
Yeah, that project, I think that awakened something in a lot of people. That was just such like incredible proof of concept. It really did feel ahead of its time. And it's one of those frustrating things too, though, where like the average person has access to almost all of those tools except for the big LED light cube.
Right.
And so everybody's like, I'm so close to being able to do this, like in my guest room, but I just don't know how to do this last bit. And like, I've been poking around, like, could I do that with projectors or something like that? And it's like, yeah, black levels are going to be, you know, funky and all of that.
Over the place.
But,
yeah, I you know, but imagine if AI gets there to a point where you don't, like, I mean, there's, I think there was a technology preview that Adobe was working, or it was either Adobe or NVIDIA, that basically relights the photos and faces based on the lighting input from HDRI.
Yeah.
So let's say you take a photo of a person and then you just apply HDRI map, and it automatically, through just machine learning, applies correct values and lighting. I mean, it's obviously crude in a way, right? It's going to have this error. It's not going to be like 4K perfect quality.
Well, it doesn't.
But it's a starting point.
Maybe that's just for now. Yeah, and imagine it can automatically, you know, pull a mat and like automatically do the motion tracking too. So you just film somebody anywhere. It replaces the entire environment and relights their face, and that's just crazy. And the fact that like all these technologies are just, you know, all coming together right now. I'm like, oh, that's a crazy beans future.
Yeah. Or like you said with motion capture, now you can just do it with your phone almost.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I need to try that. I need to actually find an app with the motion capture. I sometimes want to do like a animation, but I'm still kind of clinging to a crude ways of doing it. And maybe that's a solution, just getting a friend to do like weird moves and recording them, getting like a rig out of that.
I have a Rococo smart suit mocap suit. It's one of those like spandex things you can zip up, and that's been amazing because I'm not an animator. That's the thing I'm worse at. But being able to just throw that on and like, hey, now I can do people, which is always, you know, the holy grail for me. Like I was doing all of these big environments with no people in them whatsoever. And I've been trying to, you know, change that up too. Like I've been filming all of these random green screen elements of people that I can kind of put on cards in the back of scenes and like photo scans. Like, so a thing I do now when I'm on set is I'll grab a photo scan of the actor or actress. So then if I need to later, I can rig them up and puppeteer them with the mocap suit and create, you know, like an establishing shot or something like that. And like I've taken behind the scene photos and reprojected them back in to rebuild the environment. And so, yeah, if you just get some additional coverage while you're on set, you can make completely new shots and stuff. And I've edited them together into films, and like people don't even notice. It's just like, that's so crazy.
Yeah, man, crazy times. We're approaching times where the tools become so good that they're not a barrier of entry anymore. It's just a matter of like every year by year, they're more optimized, easier to use, UI gets better, things get easier to, install and play with. Yeah, it's fascinating times for sure.
Which is great, because that means, at least from a filmmaking point of view, it's going to come back to, what it's always been about, which is just like writing, basically. The ability to tell a good story. And I love that that's kind of the common denominator through thousands of years.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, dude. Yeah. Dude, we've been chatting for a while, and
yeah, we have.
Yeah, with a little hiccup, but that's what happens sometimes. It's all good. No, first of all, it was fascinating to get to know you a little better.
Same, yeah, man.
Yeah, and I think we covered a lot of grounds. We could go forever. I just I have some other things that I need to do shortly.
Yeah,
so I really hate to cut it. But I think it's a good point of a conversation where we sort of like covered this machine learning rounds and filmmaking. It kind of went the whole like full circle to the beginning of our conversation. Before we wrap it up, where can people find you? I mean, obviously, a lot of people that are going to listen to it already know who you are, but there's always like a soul or two that are going to stumble upon a video like that. It's like, oh, this guy is interesting. Who is he?
Oh, yeah. Just if you type Ian Hubert, YouTube, or I think YouTube's probably good. Instagram, I've got a bunch of stuff up there too. A lot of tutorials. My website crashed, and so I don't really have a website right now. Throwing tons of stuff up on the Patreon lately, which has been really fun. But
that's Ian Hubert as well, right?
Yeah.
Patreon.com/Ian Hubert.
Finally,
I'll place all those links in the description of the podcast for sure as well.
Oh, thanks, man. I'm excited to go through and listen to other episodes you've done.
Yeah,
this is a great format.
It's a crazy ride. Yeah, it's fun. Like it's one of those things where I'm a very, like, sometimes I'm just too introvert to meet with people. Like some of my good friends tell me that I hate people. Like Shadi Safadi is always like, yeah, but you hate people. It's like, I don't hate people. I just like to do my things, and people are in the way of me doing that.
I 100% know what you mean. Yeah.
No, it's just like, yeah, but this is an opportunity where like I don't lose my mind and I still keep conversations going. But also, for me, like I've gained so much knowledge from the community personally. I've learned pretty much self-taught, just like yourself. And for me, it's like, oh, this is one of the ways where I can give it back, and hopefully be inspirational enough, or maybe have guests that gonna trigger something in the listener, like, oh, like I need to try it, and maybe nudge them in the right direction. I treat it that way. That could be a good thing always. But yeah, dude, good times. Cool. I would love to do it again sometimes. Maybe once how far you're from finishing your episode?
Ooh, I'm hoping that, like, I just did the very last shot of like chronologically, very last shot of the episode last night, and I'm just kind of going in and like finishing up all this stuff. I want to say this summer. A lot of it's going to have to do with the sound team, because that can take a minute. But I'm hoping this summer. But yeah, dude, I would love to touch base post.
Yeah,
that.
Let's do that. That would be
cool.
That would be awesome. Yeah, we could go back to a lot of conversations we covered already, and sort of have a new take because of it. So yeah, that would be fun.
Sounds like a great idea.
That would be awesome. Yeah, let's definitely do that. Let's plan for that, dude. You've been an awesome spirit to talk with, and
dude,
and yeah, it's nice to meet new people. Like, it's always like you follow someone and it's like, oh, I wonder how he is in person. Like, we're not necessarily meeting in person, but yeah, having a conversation always helps. It's awesome, dude. Fun times. I really appreciate you spending time here with me on the podcast, and obviously all the listeners who are listening to this. Thank you for being here as well.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
yeah, let's wrap it up. Take care.
All right.
Cheers, everybody. Till the next time. Bye bye. Cool.
Cool.